This is a letter from Andrew Cuomo, the Attorney General of New York, the state's chief law enforcement officer, to Senator Chris Dodd and Representative Barney Frank, the chairman of the relevant oversight committees in Congress, Mary Shapiro, the chairwoman of the Securities and Exchange Commission that looks out for investors, and Elizabeth Warren, who is the chairwoman of what's called the Congressional Oversight Panel. Her job is to kind of just oversee the bailout programs. All right, this is a letter about a Bank of America Merrill Lynch merger that occurred in, well, we'll get the dates right here. The merger, Bank of America decided to purchase Merrill Lynch, was approved by shareholders on December 5th, 2008. And it did become effective about a month later, on January 1st of 2009. Now, right after the shareholders' vote, Merrill Lynch started booking lots of losses, all right? And the losses ended up being a lot worse than Bank of America. You know, Bank of America did not get what it thought it was buying. And the shareholders certainly didn't get what they thought they had approved. So, on Sunday, December 14th, this day right here, the Bank of America leaders, the leadership, meets and they start talking about what they're going to do. They decided that they started talking very seriously about exercising this clause of the contract. It's a material adverse event clause, and it just says that, you know, look, if things go fundamentally different than we expected, then we're out of this deal. So they started talking about exercising that, and they let the Secretary of Treasury, Hank Paulson, know on December 17th, 2008. Hank Paulson said, get to D.C. Ken Lewis, the Bank of America CEO, met with Secretary Paulson and Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke. And they told him, don't do this without talking to us. They, let's see, this is how Attorney General Cuomo describes it. They pressured Bank of America not to rescind the merger agreement. Bank of America's attempt to exit came about a week later, and it came because Secretary Paulson advised Lewis that if Bank of America invoked that clause, its management and the entire board of directors would be replaced by the government. Now, you know, you can take a look at what Ken Lewis said. He's kind of hemming and hawing. I don't recall if he said we'd remove the board and management, or he would if you intended to. I mean, it's getting to be pretty legalistic. And then he said, okay, well then we won't invoke that clause. In an interview with this office, Secretary Paulson largely corroborated Lewis's account. Now, this is an interesting point. Secretary Paulson, though, informed them that he made that threat at the request of Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the nation's central bank. Let's see. A couple other things that they requested, according to Ken Lewis. Now, what's interesting is here, this is a material loss that Bank of America shareholders are going to suffer. And so Ken Lewis, you know, his job is not to look out for the United States government or the entire banking system. His job, he has fiduciary obligations to Bank of America shareholders. Fiduciary comes from the word for trust, faith. And so, let's see. Bank of America did not disclose Merrill Lynch's devastating losses or the impact it would have on the merger. Nor did it disclose to the shareholders that it was prepared to invoke that clause and would have done so but for, you know, the intervention of Treasury and the Fed. Lewis testified, because he has been deposed under oath by the Attorney General, that disclosure was not up to him and that the decision came from Paulson and Bernanke. We do not want a public disclosure. What the Attorney General is saying right there is, we want you to commit very serious United States securities law violations, because that's what it is, to not inform the shareholders of, you know, what, of something material, something important to them, the owners of the company. Let's see. So finally, on page 5, there are just a couple other points I want to make about this. Notably, during Bank of America's important communications, the lone federal agency charged with protecting investor interests, the Security and Exchange Commission, appears to have been kept in the dark. To which I would say, this is me talking, of course they were kept in the dark. If they had been in the room, this couldn't have gone through. Finally, we're going to come back here to page 2. We do not yet have a complete picture of the Federal Reserve's role in these matters because the Federal Reserve has invoked the bank examination privilege, meaning that the Attorney General wanted to speak with Ben Bernanke or some other representative of the Fed, and they denied that request. They said, no, we will not speak with you. So, how has the media covered this? Well, let's start with, you know, these two are elected officials. She's appointed by the president, and she was appointed by Congress. So, this strikes me as a major story. How have they responded? Let's see.